The Marketing Legends video series is made possible through the generous support of the Chef Foundation. The Chef Foundation is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to develop and recognize scholars and scholarship in marketing globally and further the development of marketing thought.
Welcome to the American Marketing Association's Marketing Legends interview series. I'm Russ Klein, CEO of the American Marketing Association, and I'll serve as today's host. Since 1937, the AMA has served as the global leader in marketing knowledge. Today, the AMA strives to be the most relevant force and voice influencing marketing around the world, and to be an essential community for marketers. The Marketing Legends program is designed to honor exceptional marketing people within the community and create a repository of educational content to inspire students, scholars, and managers. Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Valarie Zeithaml. Valarie, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Valarie has devoted the last 35 years researching, consulting, and teaching service quality, services management, and customer equity. Currently, she's the David S. Van Pelt Family Distinguished Professor of Marketing at the University of North Carolina's Kenan-Flagler Business School. In addition to being a member of the inaugural cohort of AMA Fellows, her honors include the AMA Irwin McGraw-Hill Distinguished Marketing Educator, the Paul D. Converse Award, and the inaugural Barry AMA Book Prize. Dr. Zeithaml has researched customer expectations in more than 50 industries. She's the first author of best-selling business book, Delivering Quality Service, and the textbook, Services Marketing, now in its 7th edition. Valarie received her PhD and MBA from University of Maryland and her BA from Gettysburg College. Valarie, I've just briefly summarized your background for our audience. Please give us a snapshot now of your early life and tell us how you ended up studying marketing and now at the University of North Carolina.
As a consumer, I was always interested in marketing and in what people expected and perceived. But my real passion for my career came when I was 15 years old. I was a lifeguard at the local YMCA, and my job was to teach little kids how to swim. My boss, Lou Hammond, was huge and terrifying, but he really didn't give me much information to go on about how I should behave. I mean, I knew I shouldn't let anybody drown, but I wasn't sure exactly how the parents, the kids, or my boss was evaluating me. That's what we call process aspects of service quality. You know, what behaviors? Right. Did I have to know the kids' names? Mm-hmm. Did I have to look empathetic?
Interesting. So your curiosity and your rage to know the why behind things dates all the way back to being a teenager as a lifeguard.
But then you asked me about going all the way to UNC.
Yes.
When I was in college, I studied psychology, which is related. Mm-hmm. And when I got out, I worked in an advertising agency as a suit.
A madwoman.
A madwoman. I was John Hamm. And I had 7 clients, 2 of which were goods companies, Utz Potato Chips and Kirk Steve Sterling, and 7 service companies. I became aware very quickly that the service companies were different and they needed different treatment. In search of that different treatment, I went back and got an MBA and a PhD, and then went on to become an academic who studied services.
So your career as it stands is a product of being a lifeguard as well as being an advertising account executive. Was there a pivotal moment or a key person in your career? And if so, how did those individuals influence your career?
There were 3 people who I consider the key people who influenced me. One was a high school teacher, one was an academic, and one was a colleague. The high school teacher was an English teacher, and he taught me the love of language and writing. The academic was Kent Monroe, who I met at one of the AMA chef doctoral consortiums. He spent a lot of time with me, mentored me, even though I wasn't at his school. But the person who influenced me most in my career was Parsu Parasurman. I was so fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. In the 1980s at Texas A&M, where Parsu Parasurman was a professor. And he was a very generous kind of colleague. He didn't study services marketing, but he was willing to go on that exploration with me. A little known fact is that Parsu and I talked Len, who was fairly famous in services marketing at that time, into coming to Texas A&M. We kind of bribed him by saying, Len, if you come, we will work with you for the rest of our careers, and that's what we did.
So 3 important people throughout your career, again, just underscores the importance of mentors in other people's successes. So in 2009, you were named the AMA Irwin McGraw-Hill Distinguished Marketing Educator, and you were the first female to receive that honor. How do you feel that the environment has changed for women in marketing, both in academic and in business?
I have to admit that I might be unique among women in the way I was raised. I was the son my father never had, and he brought me up to believe that I could and should do anything a man can do, and that I shouldn't make too much of a big deal about being a woman. But having said that, I do know that a lot of women haven't been given the credit that they deserve, and that over time, it's taken a long time, but that has changed. We now have 4 AMA female academic fellows, and the glass ceiling has been shattered. Women are running small, medium-sized, and large companies all over the world.
So is there more headroom and progress yet to be made in the world of business for women or in the world of academia?
I would have to say in the world of academia.
All right, and why?
Because it's probably quite complicated, but women enter academic professions and they tend to hit we have to balance our private life and having babies, and how do you balance the whole thing?
So it's a lifestyle challenge.
It's a lifestyle challenge. I had a son when I was in the PhD program, and I had to read a lot of time management books to figure out how to do it all.
All right, so could you share some insights about the development of your book, Delivering Quality Service, Balancing Customer Perceptions and Expectations? How did you and your co-authors bring your ideas together? How did you work together?
You're talking about the business book we wrote in 1990, and that was prefaced by 10 different research studies that we did over about 12 years. We were inspired internally to study this topic, but also in 1982, the Marketing Science Institute had as its #1 research priority service quality, because companies who were in services could not figure out how to apply the techniques that goods companies were using. So we did all these studies. The first was on, we interviewed a lot of managers and employees and consumers, and found that, and developed a model that we thought represented everything about how to deliver excellent service quality.
That's the GAPS model.
That's the GAPS model, which is a model that's based on closing the gap between customer expectations and perceptions. And in order to close that gap, you have to come around on the company side and close 4 provider gaps.
Interesting.
It also, a lot of our studies were on developing an instrument, a questionnaire called ServQual, which was a multidimensional instrument for measuring customer perceptions and expectations of service quality. So what we did was we did all these studies, and then we sat down and we said, okay, let's look at what we know that marketers need, and we all had different skills. And we sat down and said kind of who's good at this, who's good at that, and divided up the chapters. Len is a wonderful motivational speaker. So he wrote the first and last chapter. I was the junior person, so I got to write the most. I wrote 4 chapters in the middle. And then Parsu was brilliant at doing a lot of the mechanics of measuring service quality and the other gaps. So he wrote the appendices.
So it took a team that worked well together, worked well independently. You divided and conquered and came up with this fantastic book. The GAPS model and ServQual are world famous in both academia and in business. It's now in a 20th printing. When did you know that the GAPS model and ServQual were something special?
I think I first knew when I was working at another institution, and I kept getting calls to come out and give presentations to companies. Our book was one of the first on service quality, and I actually ended up having to take a 5-year sabbatical from academia to start a consulting firm so that I could go out and talk about it. I never did a single piece of marketing for that book and for that 5-year period. Meanwhile, Parsu was traveling all over the world teaching people ServQual and how to measure service quality, and Len Berry was out motivating people to get interested in service quality.
So you set off into the consulting business, into the services business yourself. Did you use the GAPS model for your own service business?
Interesting. I don't know that I did formally, but probably somewhat informally.
All right.
I always started by talking to the client, finding out exactly what the client needed, who his or her customers were, and that's the customer gap.
And so did you have to speak a different language between getting published in the world of academia and then taking your concepts to businesses for implementation in the business world?
That's an interesting point. And that has something to do with the different skills, the complementary skills that the 3 of us had. Len was the person who could talk to business people. So he would write the articles that would go in the business press. Parsu and I would write the academic articles, and but based on the fact that we had talked to so many business people, we understood how to talk to them. And I've always believed very much in rigor and relevance. I started out in advertising. I had a 5-year stint as a consultant, so it kind of came over time. And I always listened and learned from business people. I took the feedback they gave me about my ideas and incorporated it into what I said. Every time I talked about service quality, I learned something new.
So your curiosity and your listening skills were 2 great strengths of yours during your career. And so the business book is a huge success. Your textbook, Services Marketing, is in its 7th edition. How do you feel the field of services marketing has evolved since the 1st edition?
Okay, well, you have to remember, I started to research services marketing in 1980. In 1982, the Marketing Science Institute's highest priority was understanding service quality. And at that time, there was a very small band of researchers studying service because the larger body of researchers felt that service was just a context and didn't really think it was that different. So we started from a small, close-knit band who were worried we wouldn't be able to get published in the big journals to what's happened today, which is services marketing. Most recently, both Parsu and I were listed in Thomson Reuters' list of the most influential scientific minds in business and economics because we had the most citations, more than 130,000 citations on our work.
How proud is your family and friends? How proud are they of you when you get named to a distinction like that?
You know, my dad was really proud, but he died about 20 years ago. And after that, I don't think anybody cares. They care more about, other things. Like, good things, but, they get a little tired of hearing me tell things that I do well.
Right. So your son doesn't necessarily know or spend a lot of time thinking about what mom does?
My son does.
Oh, all right. So you were really blazing trails as a woman in academics and blazing trails for service quality as well. You've had a lot of opportunities to change people's minds along the way. And as a consultant, you've worked with a diverse set of companies as well. How did you take your scholarly ideas and make them accessible to corporate entities?
Well, first of all, we always interviewed a lot of executives and managers during our research. So that helped a lot. And then secondly, I always listened and tried to learn from the companies. Even when I talked with them before I went to give my presentations. I found that managers and executives were very smart and that I shouldn't presume that I knew the answers. And if I allowed them to teach me, both before and during, then they would understand the topic a lot better. Every time I taught a company, every time I taught an executive program, I changed things incrementally. So I've always believed in rigor and relevance. And because of that, I was always grounded in reality. I worked in advertising for 5 years, so I didn't start off in an ivory tower. I started off in the real world, and I was a consultant for 5 years. So I learned the language of business.
So Valarie, what research are you working on now that our members might find relevant to their work or interesting just as knowledge?
I have 2 topics to talk about. One is a study I'm working on with a German professor called Cost-Effective Service Excellence. And it is about the belief that companies have that if you're going to be excellent in service, it's going to cost you money. We're studying companies that are delivering excellent service quality, but that are doing it in a cost-effective way. Companies like JetBlue Airlines, which is always listed number 1 in the American Customer Satisfaction Index, but has the lowest cost per passenger mile. Singapore Airlines, which is the number 1 airline in the world in the last 24 out of 25 years. But they have a very lean way of running their operations. The other study that I'm interested in, I'm studying not service quality, but something I call service authenticity. I think that people really react to service employees when they seem authentic or genuine, instead of like, okay, I've been given the script, then I have to say the script the way I'm supposed to.
Right. Southwest Airlines seems to give their flight attendants freedom to say whatever they want, basically.
I flew Southwest just today, and the flight attendants were hilarious. And I mean, as long as they get the safety information in, they're allowed to do anything they want.
And the service experience was amazing.
It was amazing.
Tell us about a book that you recently were involved in writing on services, implementation of service concepts for non-service companies.
Okay, that is a book that 3 colleagues and I published last year. And it's about how product-driven companies are infusing services into their organizations for growth and profit. We developed something called a service infusion continuum, which ranges from, this is left, even though it's from my right, okay, from product services like entitlement services such as warranties, break fix, and such things as a web for information, all the way through to customer-driven services, customer support services like integrated product service solutions.
That's a transformational way of thinking, and it makes me think of IBM as a hardware company that's now basically a consultant.
Exactly. And I was working, IBM was my biggest client. About 2/3 of my business during my 5 years as a consultant was with IBM, because they were going through a transformation. Mainframes and all their other products were not generating the margins that they needed. So one CEO was fired, Lou Gerstner came in, and he had been working at American Express, and he turned the organization into a service organization by hiring or by buying part of PricewaterhouseCoopers. They then became the biggest global consultants in the world.
That's a great story. And even though you're a legend in marketing and in marketing academics, I think you've been behind the scenes in so many other business history making transformations like the IBM one and so many others. So it's just really awesome to be able to hear your stories. Valarie, as a legend in academia and in business around service quality and services marketing, it's also important for you to have some fun. And one of the things we do at the American Marketing Association with our staff is we play a game called 5 Questions Fast, which gives people a chance to get to know you from some other perspectives. Are you willing to play that game with us?
Certainly.
Question number 1. Are there any household chores that you secretly enjoy?
I love to wash and dry clothes.
All right, great. Question number 2. Have you ever actually kept a New Year's resolution?
No.
Okay, thank you for your honesty. And then question number 3 is, how long can you go without checking your emails?
Oh, I'm good about that.
Meaning you could go forever, or you
No,
check them religiously?
Well, sometimes I have to take an afternoon nap. And if I take an afternoon nap, I turn off my email. And then I probably cook dinner and don't pick it up again until the next morning.
Okay, so you can go overnight without checking your emails.
Can.
All right. Question number 4, do you secretly miss Polaroid cameras?
No.
Okay. All right, and question number 5, what is the last book that you read, and was it good or bad?
I read the 4th book in the series about the girl with the dragon tattoo, the one that was written based on some notes left by the author who is no longer alive. And it was very good.
Very good. I just read an article where there is this craze with book titles that have the words "the girl" in the title. and that it somehow correlates with more popular books. Do you buy that?
No.
Okay, all right. So, on behalf of the American Marketing Association and the Marketing Legends interview series, I'm Russ Klein.